Today we have Jamie Crummie, the founder of TooGoodToGo, the very popular food app. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much. No, and cheers for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you appear on the show. Like I was saying just before we kicked off the recording, I was an advocate for the Too Good To Go app before, just as if I worked there, to be honest, from way back in the day when I was working, making some great savings in the city.
We should have had you on the payroll.
Literally, I'm pretty sure I've got a good few signups. When you had your first looking at your initial signups, I was involved in that boost.
I love it. We're forever grateful.
No worries, man. It's good. It's a good app anyway. So for those of you who don't know, the Too Good To Go app is a discount food app that basically stops businesses wasting so much food by providing customers the opportunity to get food after peak hours at discount prices. Is that the best way to explain it, Jamie?
So we like to steer clear away from the discount.
Okay.
It's more around fighting food waste, and it's a marketplace which allows individuals to rescue food that would otherwise go to waste with prices that don't cost the earth. So it's all around reducing food waste, but it's a great way to discover new flavors, discover new brands, as I say, at cheaper prices. So this could be from anywhere from your local cafe, local bakery, high street coffee chain, supermarkets, hotels, a whole array of different businesses. So really, really good way to fight food waste.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a great business model and a great idea. Before we get into the business itself, let's hear a bit more about yourself. Firstly, let's start with your educational background. I know you started out as a lawyer.
Yes, so I guess I went through the traditional route of education. I went to university. I studied law at uni. I then went on to do a international diploma in international law. I then went and did a master's in human rights law, and then worked for various NGOs before launching Too Good To Go.
Great. So, what is your take on formal education then, since you have been through the whole every step of the way and the corporate system?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and for me, I thoroughly enjoyed my education. It's definitely been something which is been invaluable to myself in terms of the learnings, the experiences I've had, and the foundations it's laid. But at the same time, formal education isn't for everyone. My own family is part of that. And my sister never went to uni, and she's made a fantastic career for herself. You often see as well that we're often pushed to go down a path which often isn't for ourselves.
Yeah.
Many friends of mine ended up doing university and really ending up in careers and jobs in which they didn't need a university education for it. So, my view on it is it's great, but it isn't for everyone. And there is a way in which we can all learn and all develop in different ways. So I encourage people just to follow the route and the path that works for them.
Okay, not Too Good To Go. Would you hire people that do not have a degree, for example?
For sure, yeah. I don't think we should look at degrees themselves as the barometer of somebody's capabilities. Skills can be developed in a whole host of different ways. And that can be through life experiences, and that can be for roles that you've had elsewhere. I mean, if you look at my own self in terms of starting a business, I had no experience in starting one beforehand.
Yeah.
But it was it's all around that courage and that self-belief and determination to further yourself and develop yourself and put yourself outside of your own comfort zone.
Oh, that's great stuff. So, if somebody did want to apply, they would just log onto your website and check the careers page and fill out the application, and they don't need to worry about having the degree as long as they've got the skills.
Yeah, there will be certain roles in which we probably look for a degree, but similarly, there'll be other roles in which a career, in which a university education isn't necessary.
Perfect. And then moving on to your financial education, starting a business, obviously you have to keep track of your outgoings, incomings, etc., especially when you're bootstrapping at the beginning. So where did your financial education come from?
Financial education, it's a interesting term. I don't think I've ever heard it referred to as that. When I was in law, it was always talked about as your commercial awareness. And similarly, these things they're often not taught to us. I'm self-taught when it comes to spreadsheets and Excel and things like that. But it became something in which we learned as we went along. Our financial education, as you put it, in terms of forecasting, in terms of what our outgoings were and things. It was just making sure that we always had enough money in the pot to be able to do the things that we did. So we were often planning on short terms, and it was bootstrapping to the nth degree, as you say. Like we were very much counting the pennies. I look back to when we first launched TooGoodToGo, and we'd use the app every single day, several times a day, not just because we wanted to test it and make sure it was going great, but it was one of the only ways in which we could get a hot meal. We we were bootstrapping that much. But I guess in answer to the question, there has been no formal financial education. I think a lot of these things we learn as we grow, and as we develop. And those things that we have in our personal lives, when it comes to saving, and things like that, it's transferring that same mentality and applying it to your working life as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that a bit then. When you was at university, was you the student that was spending all of your student loan in the parties, or were you always a bit savvy with money?
Savvy is probably a good way to put it. Yeah, I was always fairly decent with my student loan. I wasn't one of those who was going out and spending it all within the first few weeks. I would make it last, and I'd work my summers to ensure that things were topped up and I never went into the red.
Okay, perfect. So that's some great advice there. So how did the idea of Too Good To Go come about then after you've completed your law degree, you've got into the corporate world? Where did Too Good To Go come from?
Yeah, so for myself, I've always been inspired and motivated by social impact and by environmental impact. I've had many different jobs within the food sector. My first job was working in a supermarket. And I've also had jobs when I was out working in Australia, one of which was in hospitality. I worked in events. And it was here where I saw wastage happening at such large volumes, in which we were having to fill bins and bins and filled with delicious looking food. Now, the reason for this was because there was always a surplus amount of food which was cooked.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, that surplus wasn't needed because everything went according to plan. As a result, that food would ultimately be thrown away. Now, that never sat right with me. Fast forward a few years, I was then at an event which was catered for by a group of individuals who rescued food, much like the food I'd previously been throwing away, and repurposing it.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. And it really opened up my eyes to the scale and gravity of the issue of food waste. But at the same time, not everybody wants to go dumpster diving. So the idea was, how could we ensure that this food could be rescued, before it hits the bin in the first place?
Yeah.
So I collaborated with my co-founders. We then started a website. An app was then developed, and TooGoodToGo was launched as we know and love it today.
No, it's a great story and a great journey. It's quite quick, I would say, as well, for to build such a solid brand, and I think you probably own the space. I don't know of any other apps that are really competing with what you do. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, you're right to point that out. We launched just over 5 years ago. So we've been in operation for, under a decade, under half a decade, and we've been able to, develop a brand which is international. We have millions of users. We've saved millions of meals, and we're having a really strong impact, which is, I'm being very, I should be a bit more modest, but we're really excited to see what we can be doing in the future, given the momentum that we've had to build what we've done so far in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. What made you believe your idea would work in the first place?
What made me believe it would work so well in the first place? Pardon me. Blind confidence. So we're incredibly passionate about what it is we do.
Yeah.
And that confidence and that passion really instilled us and stood us in good stead when we first launched Too Good To Go. And where a lot of this confidence would come from is when we would speak to our partners and speak to our users, when we talk to them about what Too Good To Go is and how it works. And when people would, rescue that first bag, or when a business would have their first few users come in and everything would work so smoothly, the feedback was always, how does this not exist? Like, how has this never been around before? This is amazing. And that magic moment when people collect that bag, rescue that bag from going to waste, or have some food rescued from their own kitchens, the feedback that we got there was always, and still is, incredibly positive. And as you know yourself, as a user of the app, how fun, how exciting it is, and that there became such a huge source for our own confidence for this to succeed, because the reactions from people were so fantastic.
Oh, great. Having your partners believe in you and partner with you is amazing. Like so early, you had some major players on board with you so early in the journey. I remember back when it first came out, it was great in the city, like in the square mile. But if you was in, for example, I don't know, Walthamstow or somewhere further out in West London, there wasn't as much reach. But nowadays, I've realized you've got like a large amount of reach, a ton of more local businesses on there, whereas before it was more the bigger brands. So let's talk about that journey then. Firstly, how did you get your first few partnerships with these companies?
I think this leads on nicely as well from the previous question, and I want to say like a little anecdotal story of one of our first partners who joined the app. Now, when we first launched Too Good To Go, our main focus was around things like buffet restaurants, and the reason for that is just because buffets produce so much food and unfortunately so much wastage. So there was this buffet chain. We managed to secure a meeting with them, but we hadn't even launched the app yet. We didn't even have a physical product in which to show them. We just had a deck.
Yeah.
So I turn up to this restaurant. We don't have an app, so we've got a deck in hand in which to illustrate and convey, the journey that which we want them to come on with us. And I checked my laptop before the meeting just to make sure everything was okay. And then I go into the meeting and the laptop won't turn on. So I'm faced with a few decisions here. Do we try and rearrange, or do we crack on? And I chose the latter, and we cracked on. Bearing in mind we didn't even have an app there at that stage; it was still in development. This chain of restaurant buffets came on board, and I like to think, that being, a huge source of confidence for ourselves, in which we realised that businesses were crying out for a solution for their food waste, and they wanted to come on this journey with us. not because of the app itself, because it wasn't even made yet, but purely through the passion alone.
Yeah.
They wanted to join us on this journey and start rescuing food with us. So moving on to how we got these first partners, particularly when we didn't even have an app in which to give them a demonstration, was always around door knocking. We'd be canvassing businesses, knocking on doors, drumming up interest. And this was our strategy. We'd be on the phones trying to speak to people, trying to secure meetings. In those early days, if ever I was out for dinner, I'd be speaking to them while I was ordering my food about what they do with their surplus. And when I'd be walking home, I'd be knocking on the doors of the establishments which are still open, asking them what they were going to do with any food they hadn't sold by the end of service, and trying to get them up on board on the platform. So that was really how we went about engaging businesses in those early days. Was door knocking and drumming up interest through speaking to business owners.
Okay, so when you say door knocking, how do you know to get to the right person? For example, someone like Planet Organic was a rather large company. So how did you know you were speaking to the right person or navigate the way to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because one of the things that you often find yourselves is you can be having these amazing conversations with people who love the idea, but ultimately they're not the decision makers. So it was just ensuring that we could excite the people who worked within these establishments. So Planet Organic is a great example. We'd be speaking to the staff to make sure that they were excited about using a product like TooGoodToGo, because ultimately no one wants to be throwing food away, particularly if you're working in that establishment, making that food, preparing that food. You don't want to then have to throw that food in the bin at the end of the day. So getting people within an organization excited about the platform, and then making sure that we're speaking to those decision makers to walk them through what TooGoodToGo is and the benefits that it can bring to their organization.
Really? So when did you know it was time to build the app? Did you have, I don't know, a couple partners already agreed, or did you start developing the app? Where was the switch?
So I remember a conversation we were having with ourselves as a founding team way back when, and we started with a website. So we had a web shop with a Shopify account, and we were trying to convince ourselves that apps weren't going to happen. This is back in 2015. It's not really going to take off. Everyone's just still going to use websites. It's fine. We don't need to invest in that. And we were just kidding ourselves because of the financial investment into creating one. But the strategy was always, as I say, long term, to have an app which would be able to be used by people with such ease and with such simplicity.
With you. Okay. So what challenges have you faced in that journey then?
Yeah, what challenges haven't we faced?
Let's start.
There's quite a few.
Yeah, let's start speak about challenges around partnering with companies firstly.
Sure. Yeah, so there's lots of challenges that we face there when it comes to trying to partner with organizations, because we often like to celebrate the big wins and we talk about those, and we don't tend to talk about the rejections. And one of the big challenges for us was around how society engaged with food waste itself, and it wasn't something that was particularly on that public agenda or within public discourse, and as a result, it wasn't a priority of a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
Food waste, I always refer to as one of the world's dumbest problems. It doesn't make sense to me that as a business they were, and still are, throwing away their core product at such a huge rate every single day. I can struggle to think of another industry which throws away food at that rate on a daily basis. I'm no mechanic, but I'm pretty sure car manufacturers aren't throwing away freshly made cars on a daily basis, because it just doesn't make sense. But as a result, it's become this common practice within the food business. And one of the things that we found as a challenge and as a common objection from business owners was that they had no food waste. And the reality there is, everyone was throwing food away, and they still are throwing food away, but it becomes so normalized and ingrained in their daily operations that it was very hard for them to see.
I'm with you.
So it was overcoming those challenges, overcoming those objections, to go through this journey with them, and essentially create a solution which worked for them.
I'm with you. So has there been any moments when you thought, do you know what, I should just pack this all in? There's a major spanner in the works here.
So I always say to people, the journey of any entrepreneur is a bit like a roller coaster or a set of rolling hills. For every peak that you have, it's soon followed by a few steps back. But that's the whole journey. Is you've got to celebrate those small wins, so that when a challenge does come and when things don't always go according to plan, there's going to be something else to celebrate in the short term. But yes, it is very much a roller coaster ride, particularly in the beginning. As we've grown and we've got more established now, there are different challenges, but no, we're certainly beyond the position of wanting to pack things in.
Yeah, I see the question made you chuckle. Do you have any examples of those early day challenges?
Many. I don't know where to start.
Anyone?
Yeah, so huge sort of challenges that we've had in terms of our tech itself. When we first launched TooGoodToGo, it was really just to have a functioning platform. We hadn't built it for something to be super scalable, because we were just starting out, and we didn't have the resources and things like that to be forward planning. As a result, what happened was, when we would get PR coverage and things like that, we'd have a huge surge in downloads and people going onto the website, and our servers just couldn't take it. So it was like a double-edged sword. We'd get some amazing PR coverage, fantastic, we've got new users, but then the user experience would be so bad because they'd come onto the app and it would crash because we just couldn't take such huge surges of traffic.
Really?
Another sort of one that we had in those early days was, we would get, national TV coverage or national press coverage, and so people would be downloading the app all across the UK. Mm-hmm. They'd then download it, and a bit like what you mentioned earlier, you gave the example of Walthamstow a couple of years ago, but they'd download it and there wouldn't be any businesses near them. So we'd end up having really bad reviews on the App Store saying there's nothing near me, I hate this app or whatever. And we're like, no, we want to be near you. Tell us where you want businesses and we'll try and be there. But we just started up. We had a limited amount of resources in terms of people, in terms of finances, in terms of time. And so we'd launched in Leeds, we'd launched in Brighton, and we'd launched in London. But then, if you were downloading the app and you couldn't use it, it became a bad experience. But at the same time, we didn't want to turn down national PR coverage, because why would you turn down the one show, So all of these things were big challenges for ourselves to overcome and ensure that, we could build back better and be a stronger organization for it.
Yeah, you definitely overcame them well. The app's working smoothly now, so yeah, good job.
Yeah, it doesn't crash anymore.
Yeah. So just on that note then, it sounds like you had to persevere in the early days. So what would you say makes you personally successful?
So an interesting question. So for me, or for the organization, what makes us successful?
For you yourself.
For me, I like to think it's around just keeping things simple. and trying not to overcomplicate things. And that's something that we replicated within TooGoodToGo. Our business model itself is incredibly simple. The way it operates is incredibly simple. You purchase a magic bag, a surprise bag of food through the app, and then collect it from a business who fills it with whatever food is left over. It's as simple as that. So for myself, in my own life, it's about, again, keeping things simple. We don't need to overcomplicate things and try and reinvent the wheel every time. So keeping that simplicity is one, and staying focused. It's so easy to try and say yes to everything and try and change everything at once. The amount of people who ask, what are TooGoodToGo going to do about plastic waste? And there are so many different environmental and social issues, but we've kept focus on food waste itself. We haven't tried to dilute things, and we're experts within rescuing food. So again, from a personal perspective and a business perspective, it's keeping focused on what it is we do. And then for myself, it's making sure that for myself as well, it's staying on those focused tasks at hand rather than deviating and distracting yourself with loads of other things. Keeping focused and keeping things simple.
Okay, thank you very much. So is there anything, everybody gets a bit distracted and loses focus sometimes.
Yes.
So what's your method for staying focused or getting your mojo back when that happens?
Yeah, I think we all suffer from a bit of procrastination at times, don't we? And I certainly on the weekends get distracted by sport far too much. And I think it's everyone has different techniques and things for staying focused and getting back on track. I'm being a bit of a hypocrite myself. I've got my phone beside me, which is flashing with different notifications right now, different Slack messages and emails coming through. But trying to turn off those distractions is one, and staying focused at a time in hand, and making sure that you keep on top of your diary and manage your time effectively. On top of that, it's giving yourself breaks, because the mind can only focus on certain things for so long. So keeping focus by having those breaks and staying active as well. I mentioned sport, watching it, but I love to play it as well, and that certainly helps in being a vice to keep things focused.
Nice. What do you play?
What do I play, or what do I attempt to play? So I'm a rugby player. So I play that a couple times a week, but I enjoy all sports as well. I cycle every day and things like that. So it's good fun to be active.
I definitely agree. Puts you in a great state to actually do some work as well, I think.
Yeah. Are you a rugby player yourself, or?
Oh, I used to play football when I was younger, but I've stopped that now. But I still run and go to the gym regularly, just for that reason. For me, that is like my focus thing. Get a nice mind and get back to it.
Yeah, no, a big fan of team sports. You kind of kill two birds with one stone. So socializing and exercising at once.
Yeah, no, it's great fun when you can get everybody together to do it. It's definitely some good fun. And I see you're very passionate about your the social impact that your company has. Would you say that is your main motivation, or would you say there are other motivations for you in business?
Yeah, I go back to what I said earlier. My motivations have always stemmed from social and environmental impact, and that's the fundamental reason for why we're doing TooGoodToGo, is to change people's attitudes and change people's behaviors when it comes to food waste. And that's what really excites me, and that's what really drives me, is knowing that we're building something incredibly special, where we have over 14 million users who are now doing something about fighting food waste. We work with 100,000 different food businesses who are actively fighting food waste with us. And that's really amazing to see that the impact that we can have from a business perspective, and from a individual perspective, but also the impact that we're having elsewhere outside of the marketplace and the app itself, and things like trying to change policy and things around food waste as well. So that's really the driving factor for me, is we're building a legacy, and we're having a huge environmental impact. And changing attitudes, changing behaviors.
Yeah, no, it's great work you're doing. You mentioned changing policies, etc. So what's next for Too Good To Go then? Where do you see yourself going in terms of the social impact side of your business?
Great question. So we are a registered B Corp, which is a community of businesses who put planet and people before profit.
Yeah.
And that will always be part of what we do. We're building this movement around food waste itself. So I mentioned, the work we're doing in policy, but of course we're rescuing food through our app itself. But we're also working with schools to inspire and empower young people to fight food waste. We are inspiring and empowering people within their home, so giving people tips and tricks on how to fight food waste. And then we're helping businesses not just through our app, but through other sort of campaigns and initiatives we're running. So we've recently launched a date label campaign in which we've partnered with a whole host of different food businesses to communicate the message that we should look, smell, and taste food once it's gone beyond its best before date. So really like a campaign which is all around demystifying date labels so that individuals are able to have a tangible tool and a nudge on packet, whilst businesses themselves can start changing the way in which they engage with date labels as well. So for us, from a social impact side of things, it will be continuing to drive change in those areas. Whilst as an app, it will be to keep saving as many meals as possible. That's what we want to do. The more meals we save, the better impact it has on the planet. So right now we're operating in 15 countries, and we've most recently launched in the US. So we're going to continue expanding in the US, and then throughout this year, hopefully you'll see Too Good To Go in a couple more new markets as well.
And that's great stuff. So thank you for appearing as a guest today on the Knowledge Finder podcast. I know Too Good To Go will achieve the goals that you set out. As I said, great app. If you haven't already downloaded the app, you can just go to the App Store, Play Store, and download the app, or check out the website. And Jamie, just before we close, is there any advice that you would give to a young entrepreneur starting out that wants to start a tech company or build a social impact company?
My advice that I would give is just to keep persevering. For us, one of the things that got us to where we are is that passion around fighting food waste.
Yeah.
So it's keep going. Don't give up. There will be lots of challenges along the way, but respond to them in a positive way, and keep that passion, and keep going.
Thank you very much, Jamie. It's been great having you.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.